And whenever you're ready.
Recording.
Yeah.
Aloha, my name is Ariel Kahukai Burley. I'll be interviewing my grandmother, my mother's mother, and right now we're in our hometown of Waianae, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. Tutu,
Yes, dear.
can you tell us your name, when and where you were born?
My name is Diana Husman Dung, and I was born in Honolulu, Oahu, which is this island.
Who was your mom?
My mother is Mary Li'i. That was her name at birth. And did you want to know her parents?
Yeah.
Her father is Joe Li'i. He was a retired policeman in those days. And her mother was Adelaide Freitas. And she married my father, which was Husman.
And where did she grow up?
She grew up in good old Kaka'ako,
Kaka'ako, Honolulu.
Honolulu.
And then what was her ethnicity?
Her ethnic,
Yeah, her ethnic
she
background.
was, my grandfather was pure Hawaiian, so she got half Hawaiian from him. Her mother was pure Portuguese, and she's half Portuguese, so she's half Hawaiian, half Portuguese.
And who's your dad?
My dad's mother is Portuguese, and my grandfather is German, so my father is half German, half Portuguese.
What's Grandpa Husband's name?
Adolf Thomas Husman. How about that one?
Yeah. Where was he born?
Honoka'a, Big Island, Honoka'a.
Oh, okay. So when you were growing up, you was born in Honolulu. Who helped in your upbringing?
The one and only grandma.
Your grandma, where is she from?
She was born in Portugal, and when they came over by ship, they landed on the Big Island. She was in Honoka'a for a while, where she married my great-grandfather. And then after they had their children, they moved to Honolulu.
So your grandma was pure Portuguese?
Yes.
Portuguese. Where did you attend school prior to December 7th, 1941?
Kapalama School.
How was going to school in those days? Kapalama.
You know, in those days, you had a school that was English standard, and then you had the regular public school. The Hawaiians were at that time not able to speak, well, not able, but weren't allowed to speak Hawaiian or teach it. So the children, which was us, had to learn English the American way, so we had to take English standard tests to get into school. Now, there wasn't that many when I was a kid because they were just starting out with these English sponsored schools. So the two at the time in elementary was Kapalama and Maimai, and I went to Kapalama, which was on School Street, just below where I lived, Upper Level Heights.
Do you know if the schools that you went to in Kapalama were the English standard schools? Do you know that if, like, in the more rural areas, like Waianae, where we're at right now, do you know if their school was English standard at the time?
I don't think so. I didn't know of Waianae. We were strictly Honolulu kids. I didn't know of Waianae until after the war when we had to move up there. And but when I got up there, already that part of public school was standard public schools. English didn't mean anything rurally. It was in Honolulu that the schools in certain districts had at least one.
So your mom could speak native Hawaiian, correct?
Fluently.
And your grandma too?
My grandmother, that was Portuguese, now my father's mother, because her husband was a Luna. A Luna in those days was Big Whip. They ran the plantation, so my grandmother lived very well. So she had Hawaiian workers, people that worked for her. So she learned, even though she couldn't read and write English, she learned to speak Hawaiian fluently. So she managed to get along with the Hawaiians and my mother. But as for hearing my mother speak Hawaiian, I didn't hear her speak Hawaiian until I was married and had my 4 kids at that time.
What was your understanding of the United States military prior to December 7th, like while you were growing up in Kapalama school?
Well, there was only one military man that we knew, and that was my uncle. He was married to my father's sister. And at Grandma's house, I don't remember him when I was a kid growing up. I just remember him coming on the scene when I was about 7, 8, 9.
Do you remember his name?
Oh yes, Benjamin get this, Benjamin Franklin Modisette. He was a colonel. So they were big whips at the time, and my aunt used to work in Honolulu. My cousin lived with us too, which was my aunt's daughter, not his. That was a stepdaughter for him. So there was 3 of us that my grandparents raised. And
Was you and
my sister, and my younger sister, and my cousin.
Auntie Chichi, what's her name?
Marie, she was Marie Husband.
Marie husband, and then your cousin's name was?
Lenora Modisette.
They're all still alive now today.
No, she is, oh yeah, my cousin is. She stays in touch, and my sister is. So the 3 of us saw.
Do you remember anything interesting about your uncle when you seen him at your grandma's house in Aleva Heights or anything? Do you remember?
Well, there were things that went on that I observed. And when we were kids were raised to be seen and not heard. So you saw things that didn't look right, you kept it to yourself. So you learn a lot just by observing. And I noticed that he had a circle of friends that were all military, but they were all officers, and they used to come up to Grandma's house to have cocktails, and then they'd have their maps and the little ships and stuff, you know. So I had observed that, and I thought, well, that's Army talk, because that's what he was Army. And my auntie Dot, in those days, the women stayed out of men's business. So my auntie Dot was the one that would make hors d'oeuvres and stuff, you know. Very typically Howley. The house was run very typically Howley until my grandfather comes home. But we were sent upstairs, so children should be seen and not heard. But I observe all of this stuff.
Anything particular in relation to the bombing of Pearl Harbor that you remember? Or with your,
all of
your uncle?
All of these pieces came together after. I remembered the scenes of the little parties. And where my grandmother lived, just off the main Aleva Drive, Auli'i Street, it was like a flag lot. You went down there and there was nobody else beyond there. So all the cars, all these fancy cars parked down there, and the picture of the house. They used to go down in here, and at the downstairs we had big dining rooms and arcades. And so they had nice times over there. But then there was an awkward time in November. Is that what you're getting at? In November before Thanksgiving. And that was about a week or 2 before Thanksgiving. There were three other officers and my uncle that was up there that night, and everything was hush-hush. As kids had to get out of the way, and they were moving around these little ships. On the table had maps, and they were just moving them around. And the next day, it seemed like all of a sudden, everything was getting moved downstairs, and it was nighttime. And they had just shoved everything, the maps, rolled them up, threw them on the side, and the little ships they had put back in the casing and had that to the side. And my aunt came running up the stairs, and the 3 of us kids were already in bed. And she knocked on my grandmother's door, and they were whispering in the hall, but I knew she was crying. So they came in and they grabbed my cousin out of the bed, grabbed clothes, and they went. They just ran down the stairs, and they told me. I opened my eyes, so she told me, "Shush it, stay in the bed." It was my grandmother went downstairs. I could hear all the noises going on. They were doing things, and then they were gone. So the next day when we got up, that bedroom was closed, but my grandmother was inside there, and we came downstairs. And this was early in the morning, and my grandmother was up. Normally she's praying. She had an altar in the living room, and she's by the altar praying. She was putting away clothes, hanging up, putting things away, and she called my father, and he came up the house, and he looked around. I guess she wanted him to see what his opinion was. He looked around, and it didn't look good. He was talking, they talked in Portuguese, and so he left. He told us to stay in the house with Grandma. He figured something was up. He didn't know what, but he never said anything. So Thanksgiving came, The house was quiet, it was just us.
Mhm.
And then my grandfather was getting suspicious. He wanted to know where they went.
Who was your grandfather?
Uh,
Your grandma's husband?
my father's stepfather.
Mm.
Yeah, my grandma's husband.
What was his name?
Freeman Sylvester. And he was asking questions, and Grandma kept the door closed.
Mhm.
So finally, she got the room cleaned up, clothes put back and everything. And then my sister and I were wanting to know where our cousin was. We were raised together, and all of a sudden she's not there. So she said something in Portuguese which meant for us to shut up. You don't ask questions. And this went on. We passed Thanksgiving. Now that is close to December 7th.
Mhm.
So when that happened, now Kaka was hitting the fan in Hawaii.
Mhm.
And everybody the radios were on, and they were telling people get off the streets and this and take cover, and all of this was going on. So how could you know? My father got called. Him and my mother had a report to Pearl Harbor. They're already headed out there. My grandfather headed to Kaneohe. Then my grandma, I think, put the pieces together that them leaving in the night, turned out they weren't the only ones. Turned out friends of theirs that used to come up to the house and play toys with their maps and everything were gone too. So when December 7th came, it was
Everything made sense. All of a
it
sudden.
seemed like that had something to do with it.
So speaking of December 7th, what can you tell me about just vividly what you remember about waking up that morning, whether or not you had your breakfast first, or can you just give me an account of December 7th from the time you woke up that morning on Sunday?
Sunday morning we normally went to church, but Grandma wasn't she wasn't sitting too good ever since that whole scene before Thanksgiving happened. So she still felt that there was something else that was going to happen. And she was sitting, praying with her rosary like she usually did. So we got up and we were getting ready for church, and Grandma says, no church today. She wasn't feeling well. So we went downstairs and had breakfast. But she had the radio on. Grandma had a habit of making sure that we as kids grew up knowing what was going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So turning the news on at 5 o'clock every evening, and she made us sit by her legs, and she would crochet and do her thing, but we had to listen to the news. So this was an ongoing thing. And in the morning at 7 o'clock. So she had the radio on. But that morning, she was sitting there by herself. She didn't call us in.
No.
So she says, go downstairs, there's oatmeal made. So we went downstairs, made our oatmeal, and sat down, had our breakfast, did the dishes, came back up. She was still listening to the news. By then, the news was getting kind of louder,
Mm-hmm.
and people were very strong about what they were saying, what was happening. Now, for us to hear the Japanese planes are bombing Pearl Harbor, it was like, all I heard was Pearl Harbor, and that's where my mother and father went.
Why was your mother and father there?
They were called in.
Oh, no.
Everybody was called in, and for the ones who were getting the message, jumped in their car and went.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody and Grandpa, they got called in. So his rider that picked him up in the morning to go to work every day called him up and says, I'll pick you up. So Grandma just threw some cheese. Portuguese always had cheese and French bread, hot crust bread. She cut it up and she put it all in a bag. She said, take this so you folks get something to eat. And they went off, and we never saw them for the next couple of days.
They were gone for a few days after the
Oh, yeah,
bombing.
and Pearl Harbor longer.
Mm-hmm.
So my father called up my grandma and said, stay in the house, because this house was made of stone.
Mm-hmm.
Do not go outside the house. Don't go upstairs, stay downstairs, because part of the house was under, was in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So he said that would be a good air raid shelter for us. If any bullets, they had to assume that bullets were going out all over.
Right.
And so that was easy. The bedroom downstairs that my aunt was in, we stayed there, and the kitchen was there. So we were safe. They were happy we were safe. And so my father said, stay put until we heard from them. So we did. And good thing Grandma had chicken, so we had eggs, and She planted vegetable, we had vegetable garden. That was very Portuguese in those days. So we had food. We didn't have to leave the house.
I remember you telling me that when you could see the Japanese planes coming
Yep.
around. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, that was that Sunday, December 7th. Grandma was out on the, up here on the lanai,
Let me show this picture.
and
What was your grandma's name?
Rosa,
Rosa. Yeah. Okay.
here. That was the first part of my Hawaiian name,
Wait,
Rosa
Rosa
Lani,
Lani.
name after grandma. So she was out there. That was, we're back at December 7th, and we came upstairs, we came outside, we were hanging on her clothes, and she was praying the rosary, and that's where we saw the Japanese. They had to go down to Pearl Harbor to drop bombs and come around this way. So then they'd come in the front of Kamehameha School, Aleva Heights, circle, and go back down again. So we
Because
saw
Aleva
them.
Heights
Is higher.
is higher than Pearl
Yes,
Harbor. It's on
yes,
looking Pearl Harbor, right?
yes. And in those days didn't have a lot of trees and stuff, so we could see the planes going, and the puff of black smoke was the ships shooting up, and the puffs of black smoke, thick black smoke we saw in the water, that was the ships getting bombed. So it was like a movie for us, and Grandma just kept praying. So, and we just stayed quiet, we were crying, we just knew something bad was happening.
So, when about, you said you were with your grandma in Aleva Heights, but yet you and your mom and your sister and your dad lived on a totally different house.
Ever.
Eva, where was that house?
My dad's place was, in those days it was called Ever Beach Lots. Today you got all those names in Ever, but in those days that was Beach Lots, that was that Maukama side, Makai side. We lived on the Ever Beach Lots, which ran like about an acre, and we had a wall, and then the water, the sand and ocean. My mother would pick her limo there, my father go fishing. That was, that's
Eva Beach was
life.
known for that.
Yeah,
limo
yeah,
picking.
limo and fish. And so it was just family living, nothing like Aleva Heights, it was just family living. So my dad had 2 horses that he used to go horse riding. So they were on the far end of the lot, but he had a nice big lot. But the next lot next to us, the man never did build on that one, but beyond his was all packed. So when they took over our property, they took over that man's property too. So we would catch the bus from Honolulu. When I got through school at Kapalama, we'd go to Oahu Railway, catch the bus, go right down to Tenney Center in Eva. Well, Barbara's Point, when after all that bombing had happened, they opened up and they took some of the men from Pearl Harbor, my father was one of them, to go open up that base, and that's how Barbara's Point became.
What did your father actually do at Pearl Harbor? What was his job?
He was into stainless steel.
Oh, stainless steel. And then what did your Grandpa Freeman do at Kaneohe?
He was more like a plumber, but on that, when they were out there, they did whatever they were called to do.
Because, so December 7th hit, they went, and how many days would you say before they came home?
It was at least 5. For my grandfather was about 3, but he only came home to get clothes, and Grandma packed some more food stuff for them, and they went back.
Did they ever tell you what they were doing?
No. They talked a lot in Portuguese.
Oh, okay. So you don't know what your dad was helping with in Pearl Harbor?
My grandfather, I didn't get it,
Oh, okay.
because they talked in Portuguese. My father talked in English.
What did he say he was doing?
Well, he just would come home and he would, my grandma would answer in Portuguese. But he would tell her, don't worry, just stay in the house. And he put sandbags, because our house was so thick, the stone is a thick, we had a nice big home. So in arcades, what my dad did was put sandbags. Everybody else was digging holes in their yards and making a mound, making a area, bomb shelters. But ours, my dad he came along enough and brought sandbags and put that over there, and he told Grandma, just move downstairs, stay downstairs, you'll be safe. So by that time, people were starting to already, bomb shelters was the thing. And
Was it regulated to do that?
you
or
had to.
Had to.
You had to. And for us in school, as you can see, we have gas masks.
Yeah.
It didn't take long for, it was compulsory that the children had to go to different schools in the area to pick up gas masks, and we wore that, my dear,
To school.
to school.
And so this is a bracelet. Yeah?
Okay,
You want to
this-
explain this bracelet?
This bracelet was from a Japanese plane that they shot down at Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station. Well, the Japanese pilots, they were good at, if they knew they were going to go down, they know where to put that plane.
Yeah, the suicide.
You know
initiative.
that. Strategically, they knew what to do.
Was that- so
They
during-
didn't try to escape, move someplace
Yeah.
else. They wanted to get it right there. So he bombed right there. He was shot. So he took his plane down on the airfield. Now, they had to get that guy off because this was all in flames to get the planes, the American planes, off. So what they did was they had to put the fire out and take all of that, slide to the side. Well, by that time, I guess my grandfather and all of them were mad, so they were tearing the hell out of that plane, and my grandfather took the exhaust pipe, and he cut and made 3 bracelets for the 3 granddaughters. And he was not an engraver, but crudely, because it was saying V dot dot dash for victory, so it must be something to do with Morse code. So that's what he did, crudely put V dot dot dash and then 12/7/41. So that was what he gave us to Christmas.
So
that
there's
month.
3 of these out there, yeah? You,
3, just
Auntie
3.
Lenore and Auntie Chichi, yeah?
Yes, 3 of us. There was
Yeah.
3 bracelets made off of the first plane that was down in Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station, and he fixed it all up, and he put little boxes. He made little boxes, and that he gave that first Christmas.
Oh,
That's
he
all
gave
we
it for
had.
Christmas?
Yeah, he gave it to us for Christmas. That was our only gift.
How did you feel when you got that for Christmas?
I was amazed because the story that went with it, I just couldn't believe that my grandfather was pulling out, a burning airplane. He's an old man. He's your grandfather.
How old was he at the time, you think?
Pushing 70. In those days, it was not like you can retire today, Social Security. It's 62 and 65. How nice and pretty. In those days, you worked.
Yeah.
You worked until your legs couldn't take it. Like Tutu. He worked until his legs couldn't take it. That was 79. So it still is practiced today by men and women who choose to work.
What did your mom help out at all after the bombing? Like during
yeah.
that day? As
Okay, then my grandfather at Kaneohe, this was Pearl Harbor decided to open up that Barbers Point base. So they picked some critical men to go over there, get it started. And then my mother waited until they had the nurses' quarters, because my mother was she worked for nurses. She was the maid and the cook and everything. So when they opened up the nurses' quarters over there, she went from Pearl Harbor to over there. So then the rest of the war they spent in Barbers Point, and that became a big.
On December 7th, though, and between December 7th and a few days after that, do you remember if your mom was helping out with anything?
Oh yeah, she said not everybody had a nice little scissors to cut bandages. They were tearing with their teeth, tearing up the sheets because there was no medical over there. It was very minimal.
So your mom, your grandpa, your dad, all local Hawaiians, and your mom Native Hawaiian, all went down to help that day. Did they say if any of their other friends or co-workers also went down, other local people helping out?
All they knew was the people that worked with him, because one thing about Hawaii, when they need you, they show up. No matter what. They find a way to get there, and they showed up, and they, of course, they were grateful years later. But at that time, there was hardly anybody with parents at home.
Because they was all
Yes,
helping.
especially if you had mothers and fathers. So thank God for the grandparents,
Parents.
the grandmothers. So yes, my grandma became the best thing that ever happened to us.
So when your father finally did come home after those few days that he was helping out at Pearl Harbor, he picked you up from Grandma's house in Level Heights?
By that time, they were allowed to go home.
Oh, they were allowed to?
Yeah, so then he came to pick us up. And so make sure everything was set down. Then we kind of like being on the beach. We could go swimming anytime we wanted. So things were kind of simmered down. But I can't remember what month it was. Then we started with, my father says, okay, catch the bus at Oahu Railway. It saves me going into town. Get off at Tenney Center in Eva. We'll come right out of Barbers Point and pick you up, which is what was going on 5 days a week. We do that. Saturday and Sunday we spent with Grandma. So he'd come out, that day he came out, picked us up, and then we turned down to Ever Beach Lots. Got there, and our yard was full of pup tents, big army trucks, searchlights, because we were smack on the beach.
On looking west, right?
Yes, exactly. They needed that to catch out. Now, the rest of the lots had homes. It was ours, and the one next to us did not, so they took over those two. The rest was kiawe trees. There was empty lots. We were the last house. The rest was kiawe trees. So they took the 2 horses my dad had in our lot, took them over and tied them to the kiawe trees, and they just broke the doors and used the house.
Without permission, they didn't ask your dad
Nothing,
first.
nothing. Boy, was my father mad. And they were there, the guy, one of the soldiers, and they were all moving around like it's theirs.
What other neighbors did you have around you? What was their like
I think-
ethnic origin?
Yeah, I think the ethnic origin down there was all Haole,
Haole.
because my father was Haole, and so he blended in. I
But
think-
Haole, like what, Portuguese,
No, I think a lot of them were mainland.
Milan?
Yeah.
Okay. But was your dad the only one with German last name that you remember?
I really didn't know everybody, but I know my dad did. They had a good friend that was across the street. We weren't kids that were allowed to
Go Mahaoy and
Yeah,
everything.
go maho'oi anybody. We came home, mind our own business, stayed in your own place. And if there was any place we needed to go, like during those days, we used to go to piano lessons and stuff, so my grandma would take us down. But there was always something or somebody. So when we went to Eva, the beach was, for us, fantastic, right up front yard. And so that was the best playground.
How many houses was taken with you? With your
We
dad's?
don't know.
Oh, okay.
All we know is when my dad got there, and they wouldn't let him in, so he was mad. He told them, he said, "You better get on that phone and get somebody on that phone that I can talk to." And the guy said, "Well, he couldn't do this." He said, "Well, you either do it now, or I'm going to go down to Schofield." And when my father talked like that, he meant it. Well, he was just like them, right?
Yeah. Haole.
Same thing. So they understood each other. So they called, and then they said, "Oh, it was martial law and all." And my father didn't give a rip what martial law was. That was his house, and he says, "I need to get in there because everything we have is in there, clothing and everything." So I guess they told the guy that he could go in, only him. So they escorted him. How you like that? Then he realized the doors were open, so he knew they broke the locks and went in. So all he could get was, they had a double bed, and we did, my sister and I. The spreads that were there, he took the drawers from the dresser, dumped it, and then went to the closet and just grabbed clothes and threw it in there and tied it up like a knapsack. He did that for him and my mother, and for my sister and I, same thing. That's all they could take. Pictures, there's no pictures of our family from prior to 9 years, for me, prior to 9 years old because of that.
You were never
Yeah.
allowed to go back and get
But
it.
my father grabbed my mother's mother
The one you
and
have now.
the two that I have today. That was it. That was all that was gotten from my mother's family, and only because he just grabbed it and threw it in the knapsack. But there was no time. They were walking around in the house with him. He couldn't take albums or nothing. So we have no history back to birth.
And the army, was it the army that was there, you think? Or was it the
Do you
Navy?
think they cared?
I don't know.
No, they didn't.
Maybe at some point,
No,
maybe after.
no.
So they
That was-
never
no.
offered you guys to come back and
No,
get it,
of
saved
course
it?
not. No, that was it. So the clothes we had was the clothes we had, and the things that my mother cried a lot about was pictures, albums. So there's truly no proof that we were born.
Right, yeah.
There's,
Well, there's no
you know,
baby picture.
yeah, like we have of you guys,
Yeah.
all over my wall. You guys are all over my wall from when you were babies, right? I don't have that.
How do you feel about that? How does it make you feel today?
When I started having grandchildren, like you guys, and I wanted you folks' pictures all on my wall, I started to realize that part was missing.
From you.
Yeah. Now you know why I do the things I do, huh?
Yeah. Now I know it is. I'll fill it with
The
pictures.
pictures are all over the wall now. I want to see them.
So now I know if the military confiscate that house, I'm gonna grab all the pictures, never mind the clothes.
Nope, their fingers gonna pale if they dare touch them.
Okay. So you're talking about martial law. Do you remember about what time after this?
Okay, I
December
didn't know
7th?
it then. Why? I didn't know the legal terms.
Oh, you didn't know because you was 9.
I was 9 years old. All I knew is somebody stole our house and our stuff, you know. So I hated them already. And so my father just rushed us up to Grandma's house again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he called up Mrs. Deefer. She was one of the ranchers in Miley.
Mrs. Deefer.
Deefer Ranch,
Miley is in Waianae.
right? And he says, can I board my houses? He told her quickly what had happened. She says, husband, I'll meet you down there. She had the trailer for horses. She goes, I'll meet you down there. He rushed us up Level Heights, dropped us off, came back, met her. They took the horses. They let the 2 of them go in and get the horses, put them on her van, and then they brought them down to Miley. And then she helped my dad find a place that was big enough to build corrals.
That's a way to travel back then. What, 1941, 1942, from Level Heights to Ever Beach to Waianae. That's over like 60 miles.
But didn't have all the houses in between.
Right.
And didn't have Pearl Cities, you know, and all of the right down highways. No. So it wasn't, you know, we got there. But anyway, so the horses went there. He found a place. He started to build corrals. And then it interested him because she was doing the same thing. They were, by that time, they were building a Navy base in Nanakuli. What is?
The Luolole Naval Annex.
No, the other one, Second World War One. They still have the 2 pillars in Nanakuli.
Yeah, that's the... They call it
Andrews,
Luolole.
Andrews.
Oh, they used to call it Andrews.
Camp Andrews. Yeah, Camp Andrews was right there in Nanakuli, across Nanakuli Elementary School. So they still have the
Oh, it
2
was
pillars.
across?
Yeah,
Nanakuli.
yeah, the 2 pillars, Mauka side.
Yeah, yeah.
The 2 pillars, and that was a little base. So Mrs. Deefer and my dad had riding academies. So the sailors would come over on the weekends and rent the horses.
And so then it was at that time, was it 1941 or 1942 you think you
We
moved
were
to
already in
Waianae?
42.
And then that's when you moved to Waianae, from Ever Beach to Waianae. And then you started to go to Waianae school?
Not then. We kept, because things were still unstable, and my dad and mother still worked at Bob's Point, so they would go to work. So I had to finish out. I was already in Robert, from Kapalama School, I went to Robert Louis Stevenson, so it was actually, we was doing the back and forth stuff. Then when my father, when I was about 13, then he brought us out.
Did
And
you
we went
notice?
to Waianae.
Did you notice anything? Because all this martial law is going on. Did you notice anything different with your Japanese classmates or your Japanese neighbors?
No.
How did you feel towards them?
Well, like I said, Upper Level Heights, everybody was just, they were friends, old-time friends, and all us kids played together. So there was nothing like that at all. Life went on. But then when my father started to get more horses, he needed our help out in Miley, because we needed to help feed the animals. And by then we had rabbits and chickens and turkeys, but the horses was a big thing. So my sister and I had to learn how to, that was 9, 10, 11, 12, I was about 12, 13 when we started just living there.
Living in Waianae.
Yeah, otherwise we were coming out every weekend to help out with the animals.
How long do you think, how long were you wearing the gas mask to school, and how long, because what was martial law like? You guys had to paint your windows, paint your headlights.
Oh yes, that was the first
that?
week.
Oh, yeah.
Had to, yep, and you couldn't even turn on the radio because of the light. But Grandma's house, like I said, had the basement, so there was no light down there. So all we had to do is she put black curtains. And some people painted their windows black. And so by living downstairs, now didn't have my auntie. Now we hadn't heard from them all those 4 or 5 years.
Oh, your auntie Dot.
They left in the night and we never heard from them. Remember now, we never heard from them. So life went on, right? And in all that time, we were still going to school with gas masks, air raid alarms, and this is, it took about a year after then they started to make bomb shelters at Kapalama School. And then
A
they,
year after?
yeah,
they
because it was
started making-
trenches.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of schools that had dig trenches.
So you guys was in martial law all that time?
Well, I don't know what they called it, but we were under some kind of military law.
But you were black curtains,
Yeah,
black lights
yeah, yeah.
for over a year after the bombing?
Yep.
How did you guys know to do that? Did you guys get, do you remember paper notice, or do you remember military people coming, or you just knew?
What do you mean notice?
I don't know.
Well, no. We were
Oh, radio, yeah, radio.
yeah, radio. Thank God your grandma taught us to listen to the radio. But then they started to simmer down, because actually there was no more attacks, but they didn't know that was going to not happen.
Mhm.
So they were always preparing, and we were always, as kids, doing tests. Gas mask tests. They would sound the alarm, and we had to take the gas mask out of the bag, put it on, breathe in, put your hand under the can to make sure it's still working. And
Mhm.
yeah, so we did all of that. And then when I finished school there, we went to Robert Louis Stevenson, which was also intermediate school. That was English standard. And the military was using that school too for something. So my father brought us out to Waianae. So first time I went to Waianae, it was to help out with the horses. By then he figured we were old enough to feed them, walk them, saddle them. Because on weekends we were busy.
Now, before December 7th hit, did you notice a big military presence in Hawaii besides your uncle?
Oh yeah, from when I was a kid, because when we were still at Kapalama, we used to go to piano lessons downtown on 4th Street. Our piano teacher was down there. Well, 4th Street, you're familiar with Hotel Street, okay? It seemed like the Navy was from that end to 4th Street. It was always full of military men, and most of them were Navy. So their
It's
presence,
Honolulu side.
yeah, their presence were very known.
Did it change at all after the bombing? Were they more out in the open, like in the
but-
rural areas?
Then they started taking over more land and making more bases. And you look what we have today.
Interesting.
It grew.
Right.
But when we moved to Chichi and I, my sister and I moved, my mother and father had already been in Miley for quite a while. We used to come down only on weekends and go back to grandma's house. But when we finally moved out there and we changed schools, now that was when I finally lived with the local people.
Meaning like Native Hawaiian kind
All
people?
kind people.
All kind.
All
Japanese.
Japanese, Filipino, Pake.
Because in Honolulu was plenty haole.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel at all after December 7th, did you feel a fear towards your Japanese
No.
neighbors and friends?
Never did.
Never.
Mm-mm.
Even till today? How you feel?
Still
about them?
friends. No, still friends. Yeah,
What do you
even today.
Do you think that the bombing of Pearl Harbor had a big influence on local Hawaiians like Japanese and Filipinos and Native Hawaiians joining the service?
Well, I think the Second World War was over in 45?
Yeah.
In 1950s, and that's the Korean one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that would have been Tutukani's
Tutukani.
time. By that time, two of his brothers were already they were stationed in Japan. They were army, and they were above him. Uncle Morris was below him. So when we graduated in 1950, the Korean War had just started, so a whole mess of local kids from out here joined all at the same time. All the old families in Miley, all of them went in that same bunch. So it was like what the 442nd had done in the Second World
One go,
War.
all go.
Yes. And Herbert Pilila'au.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, and they were one of the first units to leave Schofield, they really weren't prepared. They were just 18-year-olds that were straight out of school. Well, that whole bunch of kids that went I say kids because I'm an old lady now, when they had showed up to leave that night, they got on the buses. I think the buses were going to take them down to the pier, the Navy pier. They used to go by ship back then. And one of the people got on, one of the officers or NCOs got on the bus and called off 7 people. Now this group was definitely going to Korea. That's what they joined for. This Hawaii unit was going to Korea. and your Tutu was one of them.
They were called off the bus.
So he didn't go to Korea. He was sent to Munich, Germany.
Tutukane is Archie
Kaupudang.
Right. When did you marry Tutukane?
In 1956. About 55, 56.
Because so all those local Hawaiians and Native Hawaiians that joined during the Korean War, they were all around your age at the time of Pearl Harbor. Do you think that the presence of the United States military just around Hawaii had anything to do with these people joining, or was there a draft? Or what do you think?
Well, I don't remember anybody down here being drafted, so they may have had it, but they were just so, I think that was their aloha. That if their friends and family is going, they're going to go.
Right.
So you know how local people are. Got your back, brah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my
You gotta
brother-in-law.
protect your own.
Yeah, Tutukani's older brother would always say that to your Tutukani, because he was younger than that one, and there was always that respect. So when Uncle Albert would say, "Got your back, brah," that means shut up, do what you're supposed to do, and it'll be all right. So they were supposed to join, and they all did.
Do you think, how do you think Native Hawaiians and local Hawaiians are portrayed in the historical tellings of Pearl Harbor today? Do you think it's a good portrayal of what the civilian population did during Pearl Harbor and what the local community did during Pearl Harbor? When you watch movies or read
My
books?
personal opinion, they didn't give a rat's okole what the Hawaiians thought. I don't even think half of them knew what the hell they were doing and why they were doing it. Now, that's only because I can remember back to seeing my uncle and his cronies up at Oliver Heights. That never left me. And I knew there was something to do with it. I knew there was something about that. Because my auntie and cousin came back about 5, 6 years later, out of the blue. Now, only because her and her husband divorced. He flew around with her best friend.
Oui.
So her and my cousin came back and moved back with grandma. But then nothing was said. But a lot you can figure out, right? So she never talked about it. But they did come back, and that's why I think my father brought us out, because now had his sister there and my cousin, they can look after grandma and pa.
So do you think, like how, because a lot happened to you during Pearl Harbor. Your family helped out that day, your house was confiscated, you had to move from Ewa Beach to Waianae, change schools. Do you think that today's textbooks, your Japanese friends, you see them around and you read about it, do you think that, like when you read the newspaper today and watch the news, that they correctly portray your experiences?
No, I don't. But if it came off as somebody at my age and I'm reading their story and it's pretty much close to mine, they were there.
Because we see a lot of that today now. Everybody's getting, and now they're
getting
telling their
brave
stories.
now.
Yeah.
See, today's generation, you don't shut them up. In my generation, they shut up for years. They were told something and that's it. Speak when you're spoken to, and if you got something good to say, say it. And if you don't, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Okay. So today, I think it's open up people my age that it's okay. I mean, some of these kids today open their mouth, and what come out of their mouth is a hell of a lot worse than what was like when we were kids. So for us to tell a story now, that's stuff you held a long time.
And how do you feel about the military occupation in Hawaii today? Like all the military presence?
Honestly, they're getting greedy. They're taking too much land for what they want it for. And that's greed.
And do you ever feel conflict because your husband, Tutukani Archie Dung, served 22 years in the service and you were a military spouse for all those years and you traveled around the world with the military? Do you feel conflict at all when you say something like that?
I don't feel conflict. I'm finally getting brave enough to speak because the kids younger today speak a hell of a lot worse. So I can say what is honest, how I feel honestly. No, your grandfather and the kids, and the Hawaiians back then were very patriotic.
Yeah.
They were very supportive of the kids that joined the military. There's no doubt about that. We believed everything that was told to us.
Which was, for example?
Well, that was propaganda, American, American, American. Well, we didn't realize we were losing the Hawaiian, and the Hawaiian.
Right.
We just wanted to be part of what was right. And we were led in our studying in school that the United States was the right way to be, right way to go. But there's a hell of a lot of flaws. They can't even resolve them now. But we did it because we thought they had our back. Got your back, bruh. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought they had our back. And it, by today and what they ended up with, all the land that they've ended up with, it wasn't our back.
No.
So it's greed. There's no other word.
So, you buried Tutukani, your husband, in
Yes.
his military uniform.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? What was the purpose in that?
He deserved to be buried in his uniform. Your grandfather did more than just be a soldier. When they were stationed in Korea, he did end up going back to Korea. Whenever they wanted something done on a military base, this is normal. They call the Hawaiians. Call on the Hawaiians and you're going to get a luau out of them.
Yeah.
They'll find a way, they call that big.
Yeah.
And one thing about local people, that's Japanese, Pake, Filipinos, they hung out with the Hawaiians. They love that reputation of being a brother. So no matter what foreign country they were in, like even when they were stationed in Korea, he did go back to Korea. They wanted to make a luau for some. There was a big function. In those days, had the Stars and Stripes newspaper, and that gave you all what was going on all the different military bases. They had it also when we were in Germany. But when he was in Korea, that's pictures we have. And of course, they wanted to make a luau, but nobody knows how. They said, go get one of the sergeants from the mess hall. There was always a brother in the mess hall. So if you wanted to make a luau or barbecue, check the sergeant in the mess hall.
Where you get food, there's the Hawaiian.
That's it. And all that guy had to do was find the rest of the brothers. And now you got a luau. So every time they wanted something done, which was big militarily now, not just Hawaii people, they call on the local people. And so your grandfather was he was special services then. So that's the kind they run the service club, the pools, and all that kind of stuff. So they know the ropes. They know all where to. They had a connection, and only local people can have that. It was on every base that we went. It happened in Texas and Fort Sam Houston, and when we were in Germany. Your grandfather was a president of the Hawaiian Club. We had a Hawaiian hui in Heidelberg. Well, because we were making luau's at the Heidelberg Elementary School on base to raise money for the school and for the children. There was the local kids, right? Get all the local families. They were out there, go check the German towns, find out who get pigs, buy pigs. And your Tutukani knew some people that were still back at Hickam who flew planes out of there. They flew the rocks, you need special rocks for Kalupi.
Oh yeah, the porous, the poa.
I shouldn't be saying these things.
I know you're kind of thinking all of the ahopua are putting it in Germany. That's okay.
It's okay.
It was for Hawaiians.
It's okay. So those guys would take the rocks and they would ship them over to Wiesbaden in Germany, and Heidelberg was right down the street. So the guys who were stationed around there, Air Force guys, they would bring the rocks down a little at a time. And we lived in Patrick Henry Village, and we were on the 3rd floor. 4th floor was always a playroom. So whenever the local kids come from all over Germany, we tell them bring their sleeping bag. They would sleep upstairs. We had the key because we were the 3rd apartment. In the basement was laundry room. So we would pile the rocks, and all our neighbors, they all knew it was rocks for Kalua Peak, so nobody said anything. So we always had the Kalua rocks for cook peak. So in Germany, we did several luau's, and then one year the 442nd could not do the big, they would have something over in Brières, France, that would celebrate free in that town, the 442nd free that town. But one year they couldn't make it. So the mayor at this time over here in Hawaii was Mayor Fassi. He got in touch with the army. They said, you know any local families? He knew if he found a local family, he would get somebody to go over there and do the testimony and all the luau and everything. Sure enough, they got a hold of Tutukani. He rounded up the Hawaiians. They came up from Munich and Garmisch and all over Europe. Ended up, we caravan over. The mayor met us. They were so happy. They had the big town hall all fixed up. The mess hall sergeants from Heidelberg was making the pig, and they had all hibachis. They had them all over there. And the other sergeant, I shouldn't be saying all of this yet.
No, it's okay.
Okay. He brought all the barbecue steaks, the teriyaki steak. I mean, nobody asked where it came from. That's what I'm getting at. It appeared.
Hawaiians are about sharing. Nobody can get
We
mad.
didn't let the 442nd down. They couldn't make it that year to celebrate, and that was a big day for Brières and for the 442nd in Hawaii. I don't even think they knew that happened, but Mayor Fassi. So he sends over, he says, gets a hold of that, Tutukani, and he says, what can I do? He said, we got all the food.
Tutukani was talking to Mayor Fassi.
Yes, the office. They said, get what they want and what they need. So they sent over cases of pineapple and cases of anthuriums.
The state sent it.
Yes. I don't know who paid for it over here.
It was no mistake.
But when you think of what we got over there for them,
Yeah.
So all of that came, and we had all the children, all the teenagers, and the wives decorating the tables and cutting the pineapple. You know how you do over here, cut inside and make it like a cap. They did all of that. I handled the show, got all the kids, the teenagers dancing, and the wives and everything. Tutukani was the music, and the mess hall sergeants was outside doing. So they had everything set up. We told everybody, when you come over, the young kids, the new guys in the military, they all wanted to come. Don't come empty-handed. Bring cigarettes and coffee. The people will house you any way they can. If not, bring a sleeping bag. You can sleep in our vans, because a lot of the local people, we had vans and we caravan over there. They put us up in guest houses, which was a restaurant downstairs and a bar, and upstairs had rooms. So we all they took very good care of us. That day arrived, and that town was so packed.
Really?
That
All commemorating 442nd?
General Westmoreland from Vietnam, Fassi must have called them, told them what was happening, the thing was going to go on, that function was going on, they will be celebrating. He showed up, and just before our show, he came up to Tutukani and me, introduced himself, and he said that he was so proud that it was getting done. He said, what can he do? We said, just go up there and talk.
Tutukani?
No,
Oh.
the General Westmoreland.
Okay.
We told him, just go up there and talk. So he did, welcoming everybody and stuff like that. So we put on the show, and we had the mayor sitting by with us, with Uncle and us, and everybody else. That place was packed. Do you know that when they got through the whole first thing, we had so much food, the people from that town, the mayor, came and asked us, if they empty out the hall, they have people standing in line outside to fill it up again, would we do the show again? They wanted the show.
Hello.
I know.
Hello. And did you guys?
And we did. And Sergeant Camp, that was Robert Camp, mess hall sergeant, check the food. What you guys got? Got enough? How many more? Few hundred. Okay, we managed. They charged these people again. That's their own people, came from all over France, because they found out these were real Hawaiians in Brières. And they sent in the second load. And we put on the show again. When we got through that town was so appreciative. They made so much money. The general had to go back to Vietnam. The war was Vietnam. And he kept thanking us. So that was another thing that your Tutu had, he followed up.
So it's not, you know, when he...
Local families do a lot when they're away. They got your back. I don't
So
care
it
what
wasn't just
nationality
about
you are.
representing the United States, being in the military as a
I think they
local
were
person.
good. The local people were goodwill ambassadors for the United States, and I'm quite sure they know it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here.
Right.
But yes, when you go foreign countries, the bases know who the local people are first, because they all know about luau's, kalupi. They all know that. Everybody's been to Waikiki, right? But yeah, you get asked a lot when you're local families, and if you have, that's not the only base. We've done stuff like that in all the bases Tutukani was in. In fact, there should be pictures and albums of a lot of that. We still have.
And do you feel that that was a good deed you did at sharing our culture? Do you think people really appreciated it? And
No, I took it as a compliment from the people of whoever asked. I took it as a compliment.
Oh, because yeah, you guys are always asked.
Yeah. We didn't go seeking. We were a hui, enjoying each other's company. We would have picnics. We'd have Easter egg hunts for the kids. We did all things family because that's what local people do. Well, it was contagious. And then other people from other places wanted to join, you know, so it just grew and grew.
So Tutukani's time in the service, you could say, represented a local culture.
Yes, he was an asset. He deserved to be in his uniform, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's good. Is there anything you could tell that you'd want to say about Pearl Harbor or local people in the military today? About, you know, words of advice or how you think history should be changed as far as Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor. I haven't been to Pearl Harbor since we first came home. And when Tutu retired, we made it an attempt because by then they had the Arizona and we hadn't seen all of that because we were away. So when we came home, we made that one trip. Took all the kids and that was it for me. I never went
been
back
back
again.
since? What year
So-
was that, you think?
We came home in 71.
71.
So I don't think they had the museum at that time, I'm not sure. But I did want to see where my father, he was in this water, pulling people out. I wanted to see for myself. But I wanted my children to see too.
And it's important for
Yes,
the
it was
younger
important
generation
so
to
they know that their family was participators.
Yeah, participators, yeah.
They were not standing in the back
They weren't
of a line.
bystanders
Yeah,
watching.
no, they were participators, whether they were in the military or not. They did their job, and so I went that one time, and then later on, as the years went by, then they, of course, there's a museum and other stuff, but I don't need to see that. The pictures are all here.
That's nice. Well, Tutu, I think that's good for now.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's
Oh
nice.
my God!
Thank you.
Oh my God!
Thank you for sharing.
We talked an hour.
Oh, we're just gonna show these pictures. This is my Tutuhini's
Grandmother,
grandmother,
come closer.
Rosa
Sylvester.
Sylvester. Her maiden name is Dilimaya.
Yes.
And this is her house in Aleva Heights that she's standing in front of.
That's the house with a family. It saved us. Those thick stone walls saved us.
Okay, and then the other picture. This is my grandmother with her class at Kapalama.
Kapalama School.
And they're wearing their
That was
their
about a month after December 7th. Gas mask.
wearing their gas mask around their chest. You wore it all day, every day? And then this was the bracelet that her grandfather, Freeman Sylvester, got from the Japanese,
That was the Japanese plane.
the plane that went
Exhaust
down
pipe,
in
yeah.
Kaneohe.
Kaneohe. Marine Corps Air Station.
And then you can see the V dot dot dash V, the victory Morse code, and 12741.
That became a motto for the Americans, the V dot dot dash. That's why the
Oh, okay.
V dot dot dash.
Okay. Thank you, Tutu.
You're
Oh, and
right.
then some names we just gotta make sure. When was your birthday, Tutu Hini, again?
August 26, 1932.
Tutu Kane was born May,
May 22nd, 1931.
and he is of what ancestry?
Hawaiian Chinese.
Hawaiian Chinese. And how many years in service?
In the service, 21, almost 22.
And then what was your profession after being a military spouse?
He retired, we came back home finally, and I went back to college with my kids, graduated with 2 degrees, one in accounting and one in business management. Then I went back to my old vocation, which was cosmetology, went back to school and opened up a salon.
Diana's
in
Hair
Waianae.
Hale.
Diana's Hair Hale.
And was open for how many years?
31 years.
31 years.
And then I retired at 76.
76. And you've been living in Waianae ever since?
I live in Makaha Valley. I overlook the ocean every day, and I get to see the mountains with the rainbows. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Oh, I wanted to Kane do?
He became a mailman.
After he retired
After
from the
21
service?
years in the military, he was 40 years in the post office, U.S. Postal Service, and letter carrier.
And he was born and raised in Waianae?
He was born and raised
family.
in Pu'ea,
Pu'ea.
Waianae Valley.
The old Waianae Valley.
All his life, from Kuleana land time.
Yeah.
So very beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay,
Yeah?
okay.
Okay.
That's
Wapa.
it.
Yeah, Wapo. Mahalo.